There are more AK-47s on Earth than there are people in Canada, Australia, and New Zealand combined. Over 100 million of them, floating through jungles, deserts, back alleys, and war zones on every single continent. And here's the part no one talks about. Most of them were never supposed to exist. The AK-47 was built to be a stopgap, a cheap fix, a weapon that was good enough and then retired. That was 1947. 77 years later, it is still the most widely used combat rifle on the planet, still killing, still showing up, still winning. Today, we're going to find out exactly why. This isn't just a story about a gun. It's a story about genius, desperation, global politics, and one of the most consequential engineering decisions of the 20th century. We'll cover the man who designed it under Stalin, the secret Soviet factories that flooded the world with copies, the real reason it outlasted every modern replacement, and the surprising truth about why no army, not even the ones with trillion-dollar defense budgets, has truly made it obsolete. Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you'll never look at a news broadcast the same way again. Micro cliffhanger. Who was the man behind it, and why did Soviet authorities almost never let him build it? Mikhail Kalashnikov was a tank driver, not an engineer, not a weapons designer, a kid from Siberia who nearly died on the Eastern Front in 1941. While recovering from wounds in a Soviet military hospital, he overheard soldiers complaining. Their rifles jammed in the mud, froze in the cold, failed them when they needed it most. German soldiers, meanwhile, were carrying something far more capable. Kalashnikov made a decision. He was going to design a better rifle. The problem? He had no formal engineering training, and the Soviet military establishment didn't exactly welcome amateurs. But Kalashnikov was obsessed. He spent years working through designs, rejected attempts, and brutal military trials. And in 1947, his design, the Automat Kalashnikova, was accepted by the Soviet Army. They called it the AK-47, the 47 for the year of its adoption. Simple, unassuming, and absolutely revolutionary. Here's what made it different from everything before it. Kalashnikov wasn't chasing perfection, he was chasing reliability. And that single choice, reliability over precision, is exactly why this weapon conquered the world. But how does a rifle designed in 1947 still outperform weapons made in 2024? The answer is in the engineering, and it's shocking. Most people assume the AK-47 stuck around because it's powerful. They're wrong. It's not the most powerful rifle. It's not the most accurate. In controlled tests, it consistently loses to more modern designs on those metrics. So why does it dominate every conflict on Earth? 3 reasons, and they all come back to one idea. The weapon was designed for the worst possible conditions by someone who had lived through them. First, the tolerances. The internal parts of an AK-47 are deliberately loose, sloppy even by engineering standards. Where other rifles lock tight for accuracy, the AK gives its parts room to move. That means dirt, sand, and carbon fouling don't cause a jam, they just rattle through. In a firefight, in a muddy rice paddy, or a desert sandstorm, that is not a small thing. That is the difference between life and death. Second, simplicity. The AK-47 has fewer than 100 parts. A soldier can be trained to completely strip and reassemble it in the dark in under a minute. No special tools, no engineering degree, just repetition. Armies have trained child soldiers, a horrific reality of modern conflict, who can operate this weapon after a single afternoon of instruction. That accessibility, as disturbing as it is a core reason for its spread. Third, it runs on almost anything. The AK-47 was designed to function with Soviet-era ammunition, but it has spent decades firing rounds manufactured in China, Eastern Europe, Africa, and the Middle East, in conditions no arms manual ever anticipated, and it keeps working. This isn't an accident, it's a philosophy. Kalashnikov once said he designed a weapon for the common soldier, not the ideal soldier. And the common soldier is cold, tired, hungry, and terrified.
Micro cliffhanger. But here's where it gets geopolitical, because the Soviets didn't just keep this weapon, they gave it away, deliberately, and that changed the map of the entire world. This is the part the history books underplay. The Soviet Union didn't just produce the AK-47.
They proliferated it, intentionally, strategically, on a global scale that had never been seen before. During the Cold War, the Soviets licensed the design to allied states across Eastern Europe, Asia, and Africa. Countries like China, Yugoslavia, North Korea, Egypt, and East Germany all produced their own AK variants. The design was shared, sometimes officially, sometimes through back channels, as a political tool. Arm the revolution, arm the insurgency, arm whoever is fighting the West. It worked, dramatically. By the 1970s, AK pattern rifles had appeared in conflicts across Vietnam, Angola, Mozambique, Cambodia, and Nicaragua. The United States was pouring money into fighting enemies who were being armed for free with one of the most effective infantry weapons ever made. And then, something strange happened. The Cold War ended. The Soviet Union collapsed, and hundreds of millions of AKs that had been stockpiled across Eastern Europe and the former Soviet states flooded onto the black market, often for as little as $10 to $15 a rifle in some regions, a price point that made them accessible to virtually any armed group on Earth. The weapon had escaped its creators, and it was never coming back. Here's a question. If every major military knows about this problem, why haven't they simply replaced it? The classified answer, coming up. Here is the truth that defense ministers and arms analysts whisper, but rarely say out loud. The AK-47 cannot be replaced. Not because there isn't a better rifle. There are dozens. But because the conditions that would allow its replacement don't exist and may never exist again. Think about it this way. Every advanced military on Earth, the US, Russia, Israel, Germany, has developed sophisticated successor weapons. The US Army has cycled through the M16, the M4, the SCAR, and is now transitioning to the XM7. Modern rifles are lighter, more accurate, and more modular than anything Kalashnikov imagined. But those weapons require supply chains, trained armorers, spare parts, proper ammunition, a military infrastructure to support them. The AK-47 requires none of that. It requires someone who knows how to point and pull a trigger. And that is why in every asymmetric conflict, every civil war, every insurgency, every stateless armed group, the AK remains the default weapon of choice, not because it's the best, because it's the most available, the most understood, the most durable. There are currently an estimated 100 million AK pattern rifles in circulation worldwide. That's a number that took decades to accumulate, and it will take decades to disappear. Many of those rifles are nearly as old as the people carrying them. Some are older. Mikhail Kalashnikov died in 2013 at the age of 94. In his later years, he expressed deep personal grief over the way his invention had been used. He wrote a letter to the Russian Orthodox Church asking whether he bore moral responsibility for the deaths caused by his design. The church told him he did not, that a weapon's morality lies with those who choose to use it. But the question itself reveals something profound. The AK-47 is not just a weapon, it is a mirror, reflecting back the decisions, conflicts, and failures of the world that adopted it. It spread not because of its power, it spread because of our chaos. Before we go, there's one final, untold chapter of the AK-47 story that almost no one knows, and it might be the most surprising of all. Here's something that rarely makes the news. The AK-47 is also the weapon of the defender. In Ukraine, irregular militias armed with decades-old AK variants held territory against professional armored forces.
In the mountains of Afghanistan, local fighters used AKs passed down through 3 generations to resist military superpowers, twice. In Mozambique, militia groups armed with little more than AK pattern rifles and determination pushed back against insurgencies funded by foreign actors. The AK has no allegiance, it serves whoever holds it. That moral neutrality is perhaps its most important and most unsettling characteristic. It is on the flag of Mozambique. It appears in the logos of Hezbollah and the New People's Army. It was carried by the Viet Cong and the Mujahideen, and it has been used by peacekeeping forces trying to disarm the very groups who carry it. One rifle, every side, every war, for nearly 80 years. That is not a coincidence. That is a legacy. The AK-47 was supposed to be temporary, a compromise, a weapon designed to survive conditions that would destroy everything else. Instead, it became permanent, not because of what it can do, but because of what the world is. Now, I want to know what you think. Is the AK-47's dominance inevitable? Or is there a weapon, a technology, or a policy that could finally change this equation? Drop your answer in the comments. I read every single one, and the best responses might shape our next video. If this video gave you something to think about, hit that like button. It genuinely helps this channel reach people who care about real military history. And if you're new here, subscribe,